it looks like the end game is going to be a failure to deliver. So there seems to be blood in the water as gold broke through the 3,500 level and silver broke over the 3940 level. The action to me looks squeezed.
You're watching Silver News Daily. Subscribe for more.
The fuse has been lit, and the blast wave is heading straight for the West's most fragile asset, trust. But this isn't a war fought with missiles or tanks. It's financial. And the first shot was fired not in dollars, but in gold. Right now, a new gold-backed repo system has just been activated in the East, an untraceable, unfreezable, dollarless trade mechanism that's being called a nuclear option for the global economy. And guess what? It's already working. U.S. Treasury demand is collapsing, gold has surged past $3,500, and silver, long manipulated, long ignored, is starting to detonate. As the pressure builds, lease rates are soaring, deliveries are failing, and something unprecedented is brewing behind closed doors in London. A total failure to deliver. If that happens, the paper-silver game ends overnight. But here's the real kicker. The East isn't doing this by accident. They know exactly what they're doing, and silver isn't collateral damage, it's the target. Because when the system breaks, it won't be from the top. It'll be from the weakest, most over-leveraged, most underestimated asset in the Western financial arsenal. And that asset is silver.
Just start domestically. I think, well, first off, the country's divided in so many different ways. It's divided between left, right, conservative, liberal, and there's so many other different ways. I mean, by race, by religion, you name it, the country's split. And you're going to be disappointed in this answer, but nobody's going to step up. If you're feeling like you're falling behind or whatever, nobody's going to step up from the government or anywhere else to save you. This illustrates exactly what you, myself, and a lot of other bloggers have talked about over time, is that you need to become as self-sufficient as you possibly can. You need to protect yourself, your family, because no one else is going to do it. Now, internationally, that's pretty simple also. What are tariffs? Tariffs are, if you want to call them, they're fighting words. Every time we put a sanction on Russia, what is that? Is that, is it a greeting card or is it a financial act of war? So it's, from an international standpoint, it is the world is fighting over trade, if you will. Because trade got so imbalanced where the United States, our biggest export was dollars, and we imported real things. And the world got to the point where they got tired of exporting real stuff and accepting dollars. And they're looking for a way out from under the dollar hegemony. Unfortunately, it is East versus West, but they're acting logically and doing they're making logical decisions, logical acts, and the most logical of all, if they want to get out of dollars, is to stockpile gold. And you're seeing that, you've seen that in the price of gold. You've seen that in the price of gold since October of 2023, when, was it 2023 or 2022? I can't remember. But if you look at the gold chart, you'll see it virtually to the day after the Russian reserves were confiscated, gold started going higher because the rest of the world looked at that and they said, hey, if the United States can steal Russian gold, can steal Russian assets and get away with it, what could they do to us? They could destroy us. So, the logical move is to offload dollars / treasuries and unload gold, because gold has no borders. Gold is borderless. Gold is accepted everywhere in the world.
The East didn't just stumble into this strategy. They engineered it. At the heart of their plan lies a quiet revolution in the way collateral moves through the global system. It's called the Shanghai Gold Exchange Repo Facility, and it has completely changed the rules of engagement. Instead of relying on U.S. Treasuries to back overnight loans, the East is now using gold. Real, physical, allocated gold as a monetary asset. That shift may seem subtle, but it's the financial equivalent of detonating a bunker-busting bomb under the U.S. Treasury market. For decades, America's global dominance has rested on one thing: the world's demand for its debt. The moment that demand starts to vanish, the entire system starts to unwind. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. As the SGE's gold-backed repo system gains traction, foreign institutions are quietly pulling away from treasuries. The U.S. used to count on countries like China and Russia to recycle their trade surpluses into government bonds, but that trade is dying. Instead, these nations are funneling their surpluses into gold, vaulting it in new hubs like Hong Kong and Saudi Arabia, and tapping it for liquidity without ever touching dollars. It's brilliant, it's quiet, and it's lethal. Because this isn't just about avoiding sanctions or sidestepping SWIFT, it's about replacing the very foundation of the global financial system. And if gold is now the base layer of collateral for the East, then silver is the leveraged bet sitting right on top of it. As gold goes nuclear, silver is about to go parabolic.
Collateral. Because if you look at the world, there's very little collateral left that's unencumbered. And what they're doing is they are bringing gold front and center, and that will be used as the collateral to margin or leverage or whatever word you want to use to make settlement. And in order to make settlement, you've got to have overnight repos. You have to have overnight money. So, it's not just from the standpoint of they're trying to protect their balance sheets against dollar losses with gold, dollar gains, if you will. What they're doing is they're trying to fully bring gold into the system where it's not just an asset held by central banks and sovereign treasuries, but it's an asset that can be used to settle trade. I mean, and it's shocking. And what was Biden trying to do? He was trying to write off loans, trying to write off, some of the parts of the largest asset. And like you said, if you're using, if your biggest asset is the biggest liability of a generation that can't think for themselves, how strong is that? How strong is that asset? The asset is nothing.
This is what happens when trust becomes a weapon. Over the past few years, the West has used its financial system like a battlefield, freezing assets, blocking trade routes, slapping on sanctions like they were parking tickets. But now, the rest of the world has had enough. The dollar isn't just seen as risky, it's seen as dangerous. And in response, countries are scrambling to get off the dollar standard before the music stops. That's why central banks have been dumping U.S. treasuries and backing up the truck on gold. Not because gold is shiny and nostalgic, but because it's the anti-dollar. It's the asset that can't be frozen, can't be sanctioned, can't be weaponized. The numbers don't lie. Since 2022, central banks have been buying gold at the fastest pace in modern history, and in 2024 alone, they shattered previous records. These are not hedge funds chasing momentum. These are sovereign entities preparing for a worst-case scenario. They're unloading treasuries and stacking gold as a form of geopolitical insurance. And this isn't happening in isolation. It's happening in parallel, across dozens of nations, all making the same decision for the same reason. They don't trust the West anymore. But here's where it gets explosive. As the world pivots to gold, the dollar's foundation begins to rot. And the weaker the dollar gets, the more violently silver reacts. Because silver isn't just a monetary metal, it's a financial accelerant. When gold rises in defense, silver surges in rebellion. And right now, that rebellion is gathering speed.
News broke, a week or 2 weeks ago that silver was going to be added as a strategic metal. But if you go back, what was it, probably 2 months ago, Russia announced that they would be also adding silver and stockpiling silver. So there is physical demand from all over the world. I mean, the BRICS nations are they're stockpiling gold, and now it looks like they're stockpiling silver. The world understands that the dollar's days, the good days, are behind it, and that it's ultimately going to collapse. So you've got central banks all over the world trying to unload gold onto their balance sheet, because gold, I mean, the best way to describe gold, it's the anti-dollar. So as the dollar collapses, gold goes higher, and it makes up for losses that they'll be taking on their balance sheet. On the dollar side, they'll gain on the gold side. One other thing, if you look at the world and come to the conclusion that basically the world is at war, and part of war is financial war. If you think about it, what's the easiest way for the East to blow up the West? Would be to blow up the financial system. And the way to do that, the Achilles heel is gold. And the fuse to that Achilles heel is silver. It's not dollar strength, it's dollar weakness. We're less than half a point off the 96 level, which would be a new low for this move. Another thing that I've been watching, and I think might have talked about it with you a month back, is the yield on the Japanese bonds. The 30-year yield now is over 320, and that was it was a resistance point. We've gone through that, and I mean, frankly, if you look at the action in gold and silver, they look squeezy, and they look like the beginnings of a short squeeze. Now, obviously, I mean, you can look at lease rates on silver. You can look at lease rates on SLV, the borrow rates. They're all getting more expensive. And I mean, frankly, it looks like we're the end game is going to be a failure to deliver. So there seems to be blood in the water as gold broke through the 3,500 level and silver broke over the 3940 level. The action to me looks squeezy.
Cornered empires make reckless moves, and the Stablecoin Genius Act might be the most desperate play we've seen yet. On the surface, it sounds like innovation, a regulatory framework to legitimize digital dollars backed by U.S. treasuries. But underneath, it's a Trojan horse, a last-ditch effort to force artificial demand into a treasury market that's bleeding out. The goal is simple: mandate that every stablecoin, every digital dollar must be backed by U.S. government debt. Lock in demand, create buyers by law, and hope no one notices the panic behind the curtain. But the rest of the world isn't buying it, quite literally. Analysts across Asia and beyond have already called this out as a financial sleight of hand, a fake market propped up by legislative smoke and mirrors. And worse, they're speculating on the endgame. What happens when even that fails? When the U.S. inevitably breaks the peg between digital tokens and the dollar, vaporizing the value and wiping out obligations in a single stroke? That's not just manipulation. That's monetary warfare. And it proves one thing: Washington knows the game is nearly over. While they prop up the illusion with digital scaffolding, the East is moving on. They're stacking metal, building gold-backed liquidity systems, and unloading treasuries at scale. And as all of this unfolds, silver becomes more than a monetary bet. It becomes the measuring stick of collapse. Because when confidence dies, silver doesn't wait. It explodes.
Let's go full circle back to, we talked about student loans. Let's talk about education. I mean, kids are taught, in my opinion, and I mean, this is obviously just an opinion, this is not math, but in my opinion, kids from preschool on are taught, they're not taught correctly. Everything is left-leaning, everything is woke. You get out of high school, whether you can do any math or English or whatever, you get into a college, you take a student loan out, which is not going to get repaid, and you get out of college and you got scrambled eggs from brains. So, I mean, it's not just the family unit. This is a plan. This has been a long-term plan to gut the United States by gutting the intelligence of the youth. When we were kids, the United States had, we were always either number 1, 2, or 3 or whatever worldwide in education. Where are we now? Something like number 26, or I don't even know what the number is, but we can't be anywhere near the top. And all you have to do is talk to a 22-year-old today, a kid that supposedly just got out of college. Talk to a 22-year-old, and they got like marbles in their mouth and scrambled eggs for brains. Nothing makes sense. I think very briefly, I would just say, how often do you hear about parents, oftentimes single mothers, teaching their kids how to steal? They teach them how to steal now. And they teach them that they're entitled to it just as anyone else is entitled to it. And it doesn't matter how you get it. I mean, it's been a breakdown of, like you said, a breakdown of the family. But, kids are, the human being is born with either, a good heart, a gray heart, or a dark heart. But I am of the belief that it's the environment that a kid grows up in and what they're taught. I mean, I'm sure you're the same as me. I remember stuff that I was taught when I was 4, 5, 6 years old. I remember that. I remembered if I messed up, I got whacked on the ass. And today, God forbid, kid does something stupid in public and a parent whacks the kid. Well, here comes Child Protective Services.
The pressure building beneath the silver market isn't just technical, it's volcanic. As of mid-September 2025, lease rates for silver are hovering between 5% and 6.4%, a level that practically screams shortage. That's not normal. That's not healthy. That's a warning siren for anyone still treating silver like a passive asset. And right now, the short squeeze isn't coming. It's already begun. The market is squeezy. That's the word analysts are using. It means tight supply, erratic moves, and desperate counterparties scrambling to cover positions they never expected to pay off. This isn't just about speculative traders getting caught. It's about the entire paper silver system unraveling in real time. The price has already broken key resistance levels, $39.40 for silver and $3,500 for gold. These weren't just numbers on a chart, they were the tripwires. When they snapped, it forced a cascade of margin calls, panic covering, and a full-blown liquidity crunch for those who had been shorting silver with no physical metal to back it up. And the higher these lease rates climb, the worse it gets. Because it's not just expensive to borrow silver, it's dangerous. Institutions that relied on rolling over paper shorts are finding themselves trapped, forced to either cover at steep losses or deliver metal they don't have. And that's where the real crisis begins. Because if enough of them can't deliver, if the system breaks at the point of settlement, then the entire illusion of the silver market collapses. And in that vacuum of trust, the price doesn't just rise, it detonates.
1930, that was a different time. 1930, we were still somewhat of an agrarian economy, and you had the thought process of neighbors helping neighbors as opposed to the thought process now of neighbors stripping a weak neighbor clean. And that's the way of the world today, unfortunately. Like you said it with the rule of law. The rule of law is breaking down mentally. because people think, oh, well, you have this and I don't. Your stuff is my stuff. I mean, that's the thought process today. Well, first off, you cannot be in an urban area. I mean, you could have 100 people like-minded, but you're still going to get wiped out. You still, spit out in your window and hit your neighbor's window. You can't live like that. You've got to live rural. And it's obviously important to have a network, because one guy's got chickens, another guy's a rancher, another guy's a mechanic, another guy's a carpenter. I mean, things happen over time. Things break. You need things fixed. And one person, you can't know everything about everything. You've got to have help. And obviously you need to be like-minded. One of the problems today is because the country is so divided along so many different lines. It's getting harder and harder to find like-minded people with enough thought of different topics that coincide with you. I mean, do you really want some purple-haired tranny who lives 1,000 yards away from you? Do you want to rely on something like that? No, you want to rely on, for lack of a better term, salt of the earth people that think the same way you do. I mean, it's like living in a fish tank with a cover over it. You don't get to see what's outside. You don't get to hear the news from the outside. I mean, can you imagine you and I being interviewed on CNBC or Bloomberg or one of those? I mean, Americans do not get real news. And unfortunately, Americans don't dig. Americans are lazy. They open their phone and whatever's on Facebook or Meta or LinkedIn or Substack or whatever, that's their source of news, and that's it. Foreigners have not done that. Foreigners have not, and when I say foreigners, I'm not talking about like London or like Britain. I mean, the censorship in Britain is horrendous, and there's censorship in China, there's censorship elsewhere, but the world is cognizant that the U.S. is broke, and they're not getting a sugar-coated American view, and that's what Americans get, is a sugar-coated American view. All is well. Oh, the stock market went down. Well, you should be buying because it's going to be up next month or 2 months or whatever from now. Americans have been brainwashed.
What just happened in the silver market wasn't a rally. It was a rupture. When silver blasted through $39.40 and gold surged past $3,500, something snapped deep inside the global financial machine. These weren't just psychological levels. They were pressure points, meticulously defended by the bullion banks for years. And when they finally gave way, it triggered a cascade of forced covering that's still reverberating through the system. Shorts were liquidated, unbacked contracts vaporized, and traders who had grown fat suppressing the silver price were suddenly forced to buy at any cost. This kind of price action doesn't come from optimism. It comes from fear. The fear that the game of paper promises is ending, and only those with actual metal will be left standing. And here's where it gets even more dangerous. These breakouts didn't happen in isolation. They happened alongside a surge in physical delivery requests, alongside a spike in lease rates, and at a moment when trust in the entire settlement system is eroding. That's not a rally. That's a flight to reality. And for those still clinging to the old belief that silver is just tagging along with gold, think again. The fuse may be gold, but the charge is silver. It's smaller, more volatile, and more leveraged, and when it moves, it doesn't move gently. It moves with violence. What we're watching isn't a bull market. It's the beginning of price discovery in a market that's been suppressed for decades. And now that the lid's been blown off, the question isn't how high silver can go. It's how long the paper market can survive.
Of those entities are no longer buyers and they've become net sellers. So that creates more supply, more treasury supply, more bond supply, which means lower prices and it means higher yields. I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the Genius Act and the stable coins. I mean, the whole premise behind that, and they've already sniffed it out. I just posted an article today on my website from, I think it was the Asian Times. They've already sniffed that out, that the stable coins will be used as a source of demand for treasuries. And then what happens 2 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever, when the U.S. decides to break the peg between stablecoin and the dollar, and they collapse the dollar? I mean, the East has already sniffed out that this is a fake way. It's a way to get something for nothing, and that something is paying off the debt of the U.S. with nothing. Sadly, I try less hard to convince people at this point because it's so obvious, and if you can't see it, in my mind, it's not somebody I can help. I generally try to, if I meet somebody, and let's say I think right off the bat they've got cognitive dissonance, my first question is the U.S. government broke? And 95% of the people out there will say, yes, of course the government's broke. But it doesn't matter. It does matter, or it will matter. It doesn't matter until it matters. But when it matters, everything paper is gone, because everything paper is held up by a foundation of U.S. treasuries, which are issued by a bankrupt entity.
For decades, silver was treated like a second-tier metal, ignored, suppressed, and manipulated. But now it's being redefined as a strategic asset by the very institutions that once overlooked it. In 2025, the U.S. government quietly added silver to its official critical minerals list. Not for speculation, not for monetary gains, but for national security. That decision alone sent a shockwave through the market. It meant the government was no longer viewing silver as a passive commodity. It was preparing to compete for it. And just 2 months before that, Russia announced its own silver stockpiling program. Coincidence? Not a chance. This is coordinated escalation. What we're seeing is the creation of a new buyer class, sovereign nations who do not sell. These entities don't care about price dips, moving averages, or analyst targets. They buy to hoard, and once silver enters their vaults, it never comes back out. This isn't market speculation, it's resource warfare, and it's creating a permanent layer of demand that sits underneath the price, acting like an unshakable floor. Every ounce these governments secure is one less available for industrial use, one less for investment, and one more step toward a complete supply imbalance. And it's not just about preparation, it's about survival. In a world drifting toward conflict, nations aren't just stockpiling oil or ammunition, they're stockpiling silver. Because silver isn't just a metal, it's a necessity. From missile systems to solar arrays, from energy grids to advanced electronics, silver is embedded in the very infrastructure of the 21st century battlefield. And as the stockpiles grow, the available float shrinks. That's why lease rates are exploding. That's why deliveries are failing, and that's why the next move in silver won't be decided by traders. It'll be dictated by who still has metal left to sell.
Stockpiling food, or stockpiling gold and silver, or stockpiling lead. Preparedness, you need to be prepared mentally, physically, spiritually. You need to prepare yourself for the battle, and the battle's already begun. People can feel that. Just go to my website, billholter.com. And I should mention, and I've mentioned the last 3 or 4 interviews that I've done, there is an icon up top called Grizzly's Corner. It's a very, very good resource for physical prepping. There's many, many links to that you can use. I think there's about a dozen articles written by a very good friend of mine who the reason it's called Grizzly's Corner is because I think this guy might have been Grizzly Adams' mentor. So definitely check that out. And if you want to contact me directly, you can go to my business email. It's BHOLTER@proton.me. There is a way for you to find out what that would be like. Just come home on a Friday, turn your power off, don't turn it on until Monday morning.
We'd lose a lot of stuff in the freezer, I'll tell you that.
I'm absolutely. But if you turn the power off and you've provided with generators or solar or what have you.
To support those critical functions, yeah.
Right, exactly. That's why I'm saying if you turn your power off on a Friday and turn it back on a Monday, you'll find out where some of the holes are in your plan.
Preparedness plan. One thing
Yeah,
that
I
we've
did
done,
it once, and it's tough.
It's painful.
But
it's
we're all
painful.
gonna have to.
London is breaking. Quietly, behind the polished veneer of the LBMA and its centuries-old prestige, the physical silver market is grinding toward a failure no one wants to admit. But everyone in the know fears is imminent. This isn't hyperbole. This is a market pushed past its limits. Delivery requests are at all-time highs. Lease rates are screaming warning signals, and the physical float is being drained faster than it can be replaced. For years, London operated on a fractional reserve fantasy, selling more silver on paper than ever existed in the vaults. But now, the bluff is being called. As physical demand explodes and sovereign buyers lock away ounces permanently, the cracks are becoming impossible to hide. Every new delivery request becomes a threat. Every short position becomes a liability. And every failed settlement pushes the market 1 inch closer to the abyss. The real fear? That one day soon, a major player will ask for delivery and be told it's not available. That moment would be catastrophic, because once it's proven that the LBMA can't deliver, the entire illusion of liquidity vanishes. Paper contracts would collapse, confidence would evaporate, and the silver price? It wouldn't rise gradually. It would be repriced instantly, violently, and globally. The East knows this. They're not trying to compete within the Western system. They're trying to break it. And London, once the crown jewel of global metals trading, is now the pressure point. One final squeeze away from snapping. When that moment comes, it won't be slow and it won't be contained. Because when a market built on promises can no longer deliver, only one thing matters. Who has the metal?
CEOs are funding so many things that are detrimental to the United States as a country, as a whole. I mean, it's a takedown. And you're asking me where it goes. I mean, I'll just go back to just plain mathematics. The U.S. government is broke. And the entire financial system is going to collapse. And we will spend a spell. Is it 2 weeks? Is it 2 months? Is it 6 months? God forbid, or more? I don't know. But we're going to go through a period of time where your perception will be that your life is within Mad Max.
Facing that, what are some concrete steps you think individuals can and must do? You've talked to us in broad terms about not living in crowded urban areas and having some resources. Any other thoughts from you on that regard?
Yeah, just become as self-sufficient as you possibly can. And I mean, if I had kids, I would homeschool them when they got to be 18 years old. I would tell them, you want to go to college? Fine, that's your decision, but you pay for it. You want to go to a trade school? I'll pay for all of it. Because someone that goes to trade school will be able to provide for themselves with an actual skill for the rest of their life. You get kids that go to school, in their literature majors or whatever, they have no skills whatsoever other than to just spew, repeat what they've heard. Party when you pay your house off. Guess what? You're still going to get a bill the next year, the following year, the year after that. And those bills are going to go higher and higher and higher, your tax bills. And a huge amount of foreclosures are going to happen. And again, this is not Bill Holter's opinion. It's math. All you have to do is look where we were, where we are now, and where it's headed. It's mathematically, financially over.
Everything we've just walked through leads to one terrifying, inevitable conclusion. The Western financial system is built on a fault line, and silver is the crack that could bring the whole thing down. While Wall Street parades its stability, while London clings to its prestige, the East is methodically dismantling the very pillars that once made the dollar untouchable. They've weaponized gold, engineered a new collateral system, and triggered a treasury sell-off the West cannot stop. But it's silver, the smallest, most volatile, and most shorted of all monetary metals, that holds the real power to detonate the system. Because if London fails to deliver, if even one major counterparty is left holding a worthless IOU instead of physical silver, the paper market dies on the spot. Trust will vanish, prices will go vertical, and decades of suppression will unwind in a matter of days. This isn't a prediction, it's a countdown. Every lease rate spike, every delivery delay, every sovereign stockpile brings us closer to a historic repricing that could redefine wealth, power, and global trade. So the question isn't if silver will break out. It's who will be left holding metal when it does. If you see what's coming, now is the time to prepare. Because when the paper burns, only the physical will remain. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to stay ahead of this unfolding financial reset. And remember, this is not financial advice. Always speak to a licensed professional before making any investment decisions.